Christian Church of Litchfield. Hey, you're looking good. I am glad you're here to worship with us today. If you were here Christmas Eve, you will recall very well that I showed you a robe that I'm really fond of. This robe represents a 5-star hotel. It's kind of my security blanket at night. If I wake up not feeling well, sick, or with a bad headache, and I need to sit in my rocker recliner, I just clothe myself in this plush robe from the Ritz-Carlton. This robe symbolizes that it's all about me. Because when the Starlight Foundation gave us that trip to California and put us up in the Ritz-Carlton, they gave us a robe like this, and I realized I didn't have to worry about anything. They would take care of my needs. For example, if I got, hunger pains and wanted some munchies at midnight, I would just call for room service, and I could order a filet mignon or a lobster tail. And the guy that would bring it was not dressed like the pizza delivery guy who you was sure ate part of your toppings before it got to your room. This guy comes in a tuxedo. Wow. And in the morning, I can get in the shower, and I can run the hot water for as long as I want to. If I want to sit or if I want to stand, they had a chair in there. You could sit, you could stand in that shower, you could do whatever you wanted for as long as you wanted. I could use up all the soap. It didn't matter. They would have more soap for me later that morning. They would bring breakfast to my room. If we went out to see a movie that night, when we came back, there was a bowl on our table filled with fresh fruit. There was a second bowl of ice cream goodies packed in ice. It was all about my comfort. It was all about my pleasure. If I wanted to sit on the edge of my bed and cut my toenails or my fingernails and just let them fly, it's all right. Somebody else is going to clean it up. After I get out of the shower, I take my towel, unlike home, and I can just throw it on the floor. Somebody will pick it up and pick up after me and clean up after me and make it look brand new. It was all about me. And it's pretty attractive. Only problem with that is that Jesus Christ calls us to a totally different life than that of the symbol of a robe from a 5-star hotel. We like that, but we've been looking at the Gospels since New Year's, and today we're going to see that Jesus Christ calls us to take a towel instead of a robe. Listen to what Mark says here in chapter 10, verse 43 through 45. Whoever would be great among you must. Now, it's kind of nice. He didn't put that way. He says he must serve and minister. That's serve and serve. The word minister means serve. So it's almost redundant, but that's how important it is. He must serve and serve. Whoever wants to be great among you must be slave of all. Even the Son of Man came not to be served, but to be a servant, to offer his life as a ransom for others. And so today, we're talking the past 2-3 months about following Jesus as we look at the Gospels. Here's what it means to follow Jesus. Following Jesus is synonymous with serving. And Jesus calls us to give up our robe in order to take the lowly, humble towel of of service. He's called us to be servants and to be foot washers of other people. That's what we read about today in John the 13th chapter. And if you're filling in the outline, we're going to begin as we get ready to read it. But the first point is important, that here's what we see, that towel bearers are called to serve indiscriminately. Indiscriminately. Now, I'm going to be reading for you chapter 13 of John, beginning with verse 2. We'll come back to verse 1 later. But I want you to see who it is that Jesus serves that night as he's getting ready to go to the cross. And we read in other gospel accounts that this day a fight broke out among the disciples, who was going to be top dog in the kingdom, who was going to be the greatest. And so we read. Just take a look at the people that Jesus serves and takes the towel to minister. The evening meal was being served, and the devil had already prompted Judas Iscariot, son of Simon, to betray Jesus. Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under his power, and that he'd come from God and was returning to God. So he got up from the meal, took off his outer clothing, and wrapped a towel around his waist. After that, he poured water into a basin and began to wash his disciples' feet, drying them with a towel that was wrapped around him. He came to Simon Peter, who said to him, "Lord, are you going to wash my feet?" Jesus replied, "You do not realize now what I'm doing, but later you will understand." "No," said Peter, "you shall never wash my feet." Jesus answered, "Unless I wash you, you have no part with me." Then, Lord, and this is so much Simon Peter, he's just, gun-ho when he goes all out, and I love that part about him. He says, "Well then, Lord, don't just wash my feet, but my hands and my head as well. Just give me a bath from head to toe." Can't you see Jesus smile and say, "Nah," he says, a person who has had a bath needs only to wash his feet. His whole body is clean, and you are clean, though not every one of you. For he knew who was going to betray him, and that's why he said, not every one is clean. When he had finished washing their feet, he put on his clothes and returned to his place. "Do you understand," he says, "what I've done for you?" He asked them. "You call me teacher and Lord, and that is correct. For that is what I am." And that's who he is. He is Lord. "Now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you should wash one another's feet. I have set you an example that you should do as I've done for you. I tell you the truth, no servant's greater than his master, nor is a messenger greater than one who sent him. Now that you know these things, you will be blessed if you do them." So, who is it that Jesus takes the towel and begins to wash the feet? He begins to wash the feet of the disciples, and about every one of them were going to be a pretty big disappointment in just a matter of a few hours or less. Every one of them would cause him incredible personal pain and disappointment, except John. He's the only one that's there at the foot of the cross. Peter was going to curse and swear, saying, "I don't know the man. Don't know Jesus after all Jesus has done for him." And Jesus takes that towel and he kneels down and he washes Peter's feet. He washes the feet of Judas, who was getting ready to go out and sell him out to the soldiers who were nailing him to a cross. Incredible when you see the audience that Jesus served. He didn't just serve the people that served him. He didn't just serve the people that he liked. He didn't just serve people that he wanted to serve. He just served indiscriminately. How do you serve? A husband who has never once been sensitive of your need? How do you serve a wife who has not been affectionate or appreciative and has never once said, I appreciate all that you do and all your hard work in providing for this family? How do you serve a child that's never once wrapped their arms around you and said, thanks, Mom, Dad, I love you? How do you serve a coworker who is constantly talking behind your back and stabbing you in the back? How do you serve a neighbor who is always taking, but when you need something, he's not one you can go and ask for any help or anything? How do you serve a father in which no matter how good you do, it's never good enough? How do you serve a church member who feels superior to you? How do you serve when you feel unnoticed and unappreciative, and you're even criticized by those who do not serve? I don't know about you. I know what I'm tempted to do. I'm not tempted to serve them. I'm tempted to serve them up maybe, but not to serve them. I'll tell you what I do. I'm tempted to do. I fold up my towel real neatly, and I put it back in the drawer, and I think, that's the way you want to be? Fine. But that's not following Jesus. We see in John 13, he served indiscriminately. He served people that were going to disappoint him and hurt him deeply. But he knelt down as king of the universe, and he washed the feet that he had made and created for those people. And he calls you and I to do the same. Here's the second lesson. And this is a tough one as well. None of these are easy. We are called to serve even when we really need to be served. Think about that. Jesus calls us to serve even when we really need to be served ourselves. We're called to be towel bearers, to serve even when they need to be served. That's who towel bearers are. Now, John 13:1. It was just before the Passover festival. Jesus knew that the hour had come for him to leave this world. And he also knew, because he had told his disciples many times, what that last hour would entail. It was going to the cross. It was the crucifixion. He had the pressure of the world upon him. He was going to take the sins of the whole world. He who knew no sin would become sin for you and I, so that the righteousness of God might be manifested in our lives. Jesus knew the hour had come for him to leave this world to go to the Father, having loved his own who were in the world. He loved them to the end. You know, sometimes I think we feel we get a pass on serving. And here's why. We'll say, I'd like to, but my life's a mess right now. I got so much bad stuff going on in my life right now. It's not the fact that we're busy. It's just the fact that we're going through some really storms, personal storms ourselves. We're hurting ourselves. And we're saying, you know, I could really use somebody to minister to me. Folks, if anybody needed somebody to minister to them, it was Jesus. Every one of those disciples should have been on their knees around him saying, we can't imagine what you're going through. How can we make it any better? We're here, having their arms around him, hugging him, embracing him, praying with him. He needed to be served, and he deserved it. And he had more of a crucial hour upon him than any of us could ever begin to even try to imagine. He needed to be served. What's he do? He serves. Let me suggest to you that not to be oblivious of your hurt, of your hurts and your pain. I don't want to make light of that at all. But could I possibly suggest that following Jesus' example, maybe through serving, you'll find some healing? And God isn't mocked. He said, whatever you sow, you're going to reap. And I find that sometimes those people that have people serving them when they need it are those who have been servants their whole life. You know what I'm saying? It's only when you've not been a servant and you're hurting that people aren't quick to come around and get on their knees and serve you, usually. So it has a way of coming back to you. And it certainly can produce healing. I came across an article this week that stated depression in young adults today is epidemic. Epidemic in young adults today. People that should be at the prime of life and have life before them, they're married, they're out of college, they're starting a family. Depression is like 300% greater than it was just 2 or 3 decades ago. Much higher for them than their parents or their grandparents. No contest. And the article went on to suggest that perhaps one of the reasons is because we have made everything about us. It's all about the child. It's about their, well-being. And it's all about them. And so we grow up and we think it's about serving me. But that just leads to depression. I think it was Minirth and Myers that were asked if one felt a nervous breakdown coming upon them, what should one do? And you'd think the answer would be, go to a 5-star hotel, wrap yourself in one of these robes, and eat those munchies at midnight of filet mignon and lobster tail and ice cream goodies and all that junk, and curl up in a nice, big, warm, soft bed. It's not what they said. They said when people feel overwhelmed and feel like they're at the end of the road and they're about to have a breakdown, they said they need to go across town, find somebody worse off than themselves, and they need to begin to serve them. They said they'll never find healing otherwise. Wow. That's radical. But that's kind of what Jesus suggests here through his very example, doesn't it? When he needed to be served the most, he takes the towel and he says, let me serve you. Let me serve you. Thirdly, towel bearers serve because they see a need. They open their eyes to the needs around them. Service will open your eyes. 5 years ago, I'll never forget this. Many of you may not forget this as well. 5 years ago, a new TV series aired in February of 2010, 5 years ago last month. I was so excited about it, pumped about it. I even brought a clip that week and played for my sermon the following week. And it was from Undercover Boss. How many of you remember it? Kathy, she's laughing. She remembers it. I was so pumped up because the first one they did was the CEO of Waste Management, where he went undercover from being in the ivory tower, from the Robe, the luxuries, the private plane, jet plane, and all that stuff, and all that goes with it, and the $1 million bonuses, and not counting the salaries and stuff. Put it all aside. And he took a towel, figuratively, and he began to work on one of the garbage trucks. And he worked with an incredible gal. And his eyes were open to the fact he had people working for him. Of course, he never knew because there's millions of employees of waste management nationwide. He was so touched, and his eyes were so opened. It opened his heart. And I played a clip of this guy, when they're around the table and the needs are so great. and he says, I can make a difference here. And how pumped and charged he was. And I said, man, this is just a great series. You guys need to watch it. It's on Sunday night. That night, the second Sunday night, everybody here went home to watch Undercover Boss, and they interviewed the CEO of Hooters. Oh, man. Sometimes you got to take the towel and wipe the egg off your face, you know? And man, I knew I should have stuck with Andy Griffith, Mark. That's what I get, you know. And, man, I did. I had egg on my face after that. And but Undercover Boss just shows what happens when you begin to serve instead of having people wait on you every time, no matter what the company is. It opens the eyes of people. Jesus didn't just go undercover for a few days, a week, to see what's going on down here. He went undercover for a lifetime, from birth to death. He took our towel, put his robe, and what a robe it was, makes this look like junk. He laid it aside, and he says, give me the towel. And that's going to be my life. I want to be a servant. Now, it's interesting. The need is there. The disciples have come in. It was just common custom, as we've seen from other passages in this series, the messages, that after traveling the dusty roads, the feet need to be washed. But nobody had done that, because nobody saw themselves as a servant. They saw themselves better than the rest of the guys, or just as good, and said, well, nobody else is washing feet. I'm not going to do that either. And Jesus says, guys, you're oblivious. Here's a very basic need. None of you can see it. If you do, you're sure not responding to it. Now, I want to encourage you to become a servant. And you can begin by asking yourself, what gifts and abilities has God given me and blessed me with? You know, and then you can ask, where are my passions? Some people are passionate about working with kids, and they're good with the youth programs, or working in the nursery, or working on Wednesday night and such, and that's great. Others are passionate about helping people, and they're great with, like, Ellen's gift and ministering to people that have needs, you know, and such. Dennis Garrels, from our own congregation, sitting back here, is going with John Blackmore was here in January. He's going with their church, their team, and he's going to Uganda, and he's going to Cuba, and he's going not wearing a robe, but taking a towel. And the towel he takes is where his passion is, and where he's so gifted is photography. And Dennis, his resume, most of you aren't aware of because he's a very humble man, is stellar. It's unbelievable. The lifetime that he has spent in photography. He's now using it, going on 2 mission trips this summer out of the country. That's great. So you can ask yourselves those questions. But here's the bottom line. Sometimes it comes down to this. Sometimes you just serve because there's just a real need. Yeah. I don't think Jesus was passionate, and I don't think he was really fond of washing dirty feet, thinking, I just love doing this. How many of you here would say, that's a job, sign me up. I like to wash other people's feet that are dirty. It's not something you like, maybe. Maybe you're not passionate about. Maybe you say, I don't think I'm gifted. You can learn. But it's a need. And Jesus excuse me, responds. Now, what I've done this week is I've talked to some of the people in the office and some staff members, asking them, where are some areas that we need people to step up and say, I will serve. Because after Easter, we're going to be asking you to fill out areas for 1 year. It's for 1 year where you're willing to serve. And there are so many areas. Every week the church is clean. And every week it's because we have people come in, just volunteer, and they excel. They do their best because they do it for Christ. And this place looks great every week. The problem is we have lost a lot of the people that have cleaned. Some have moved away, some have passed away, some have gone. And we have just a few people. And it'd be so much easier if we had a dozen people cleaning the church. You wouldn't have to clean very, very often when we all get connected to serving. There's always a big need with our young people. I'm going to ask Jessica if she'd come up at this point. I talked to her briefly, and I thought, she knows more about this than I do. Jess, would you just share, as we go to one service, where we're at on servers or lack of servants and people serving in the nursery? What's the situation there?
Well, as of right now, we have about 3 to 4 names we're rotating on the same exact nursery.
That's not very much.
That's not a lot at all.
You don't get much to sit in church like it.
And as we stand, where we mesh the 2 services together, I am going to be serving every single Sunday. I don't have a time to worship. So we need more to rotate in. The more we rotate in, the longer in between the rotation. So all it takes is 4 or 5 more people, and then we're all covered.
So 4 or 5 would make
4 or 5
a big
would be
difference in
wonderful,
that area.
Life-changing.
And that's the nursery.
That's the nursery.
Now, we also have primary worship,
We
too.
do. If you like your lessons planned for you, you walk in there, everything's ready to go. If you like to teach and you like to do arts and crafts, it's right up your alley. And for the nursery also, a lot of you are thinking, I don't have the energy. I can't. If you have enough energy to give a hug, you're in. That's all I need. That's it.
That is so true.
And you can just be a helper. I'll get somebody to do all the running for you. Just sit there and love on kids, and you're good.
That's great. One quick thing. Didn't you have this week a meeting for Vacation Bible School?
Yes.
And we always need a ton of
We need a ton of people. And even if you just stand there at the door and say hello to those kids, that means the world to them. It's life-changing. It really is. And I'm an expert there because this is how I got in the church, VBS. And I had a bunch of people welcome me in and say, that's it. I had a bunch of people welcome me in, and I came from a home where we didn't really talk about Christ, and you guys a lot of you right here, welcomed me in and brought me in, and that's it. That's all it takes. I can have you sit in a chair. If you physically can't stand, I can put you wherever you need to be.
Wow. That's powerful, isn't it? Jess, thank you so much. And that's some of the results that can happen when one serves. You have an incredible young kid in VBS grow up to become a Jessica Chandler. That's exciting. You just got to see the need. Came across a true story this week of a very touching for me as I read it, of a little boy that was in 1st or 2nd grade. And one day at school, as he's sitting at his desk, he didn't know how it happened, but all of a sudden there's a puddle between his feet, and the front of his pants are wet. And he sits there mortified, worst day of his life, thinking, what am I going to do? The teacher is walking down between the desks there towards the back of the classroom, and he knows she'll see, and don't know if she'll send him to the office to, and he's just mortified. At the same time, there's a young girl in his class named Julie who has a fishbowl with water in it, and she's walking by, and she sees the situation, and she accidentally, on purpose, dumps the water all over the young boy. He's sitting there thinking, thank you, Jesus, my prayers have been answered, And at once, everybody jumps up, and, oh, hey, and the teacher comes and she kneels down, and everybody's having pity for this poor boy who just got his clothes soaked from this water. The problem is, everybody begins pointing their finger at Julie and say, you're a klutz. Man, you should be more careful. Look what you done. And nothing is said, and the teacher takes the boy to the office, and they call mom, and she brings him a dry set of clothes, and he changes. And at the end of the school day, as they're waiting to get on the bus, the boy walks over, sees Julie standing by herself, and he said, I know you did that on purpose. Thanks. He said, I'm sorry everybody gave you a hard time. She goes, it's okay. She said, I had an accident once myself. Those people make incredible servants. Sometimes you just got to serve because you see a need. And there's healing in it, as we've talked about. And there's a blessing for those who serve. It was just last Sunday. Sam and I were going to eat at Pizza Man after church, and we were in line, and a couple from this congregation paid for our meal. Now, I was blessed. It was probably the best lunch I ever had. It always tastes better when it's free, But it was an incredible blessing. But I know what Jesus says, it's more blessed to give than to receive. And so I was willing to make the sacrifice and give the blessing to those who paid, for us. But that's just somebody, spur of the moment, said, hey, we see a need. And I'm about the neediest person you can imagine. And they responded, There are blessings for those who say, God opened my eyes. And they take up a towel to wash the feet of the people around them. Last point. Here we go. Towel bearers serve because they've been crucified with Christ. Churches are notorious. We have so many areas that we need help serving. We need help with nursery. We need help with primary worship. We need help with VBS. We need help with cleaning. We need help with home communion. We need help. Oh, you name it. There's just so many ministries here, and you're going to see them all listed. But here's what happens with churches. We have far more needs, it seems like, than we have servants. And we say, how can we get people to serve? And sometimes we want to resort to earthly motivations. You know what I'm talking about? And we try to give them a pep talk. We try to put a guilt trip on them. And you know what the answer is? You take them to the foot of the cross. You take them to the foot of the cross. People that say, I don't want that towel, you can just keep it. Or people that have never come to the foot of the cross. Remember how we started? We said, following Jesus is synonymous with taking up the towel and serving. You just got to find out where you serve. Now, a couple statements we want to put up here and leave you with today. Towel bearers do not see service as a temporary act, but rather as a way of life. That's how Jesus lived his life, and that's what he talked about. He didn't just say, I did this one act. He said, I came not to be served, but to serve. I came as a servant. That's who I am. It's who they are. Now here's what, and we're just asking you to sign up for 1 year and try it. And maybe next year you want to serve in a different area, and that's okay, as well. But when people die on a cross, here's what I discover. Their whole life is changed. A person on the cross knows he's not coming off there alive. This is the end of his life, his story. And there's got to come that point where it's over as far as being about me. And the only way that happens is to crucify yourself with Christ, to take up your cross, and to follow Jesus. It's what he calls us to do. And it goes completely countercultural. It's not easy. When we are born, if we have a need, if we want to eat in the middle of the night, we don't say, hey, it's the middle of the night, Mom needs her sleep. We don't care. We want to eat now, and we let them know we want to eat now, and we let them know we don't want to eat 5 minutes from then. We're hungry now. We don't care who we interrupt, but they got to get up and meet our needs. If our diaper's wet, needs change, we want to change now. We'll throw a fit, and we'll upset the whole household until somebody does something about it. And so as a child, we grow up where all of our needs are taken care of by someone else. And if parents aren't careful, then what happens is that child just continues to be dependent on others. And they say, as they get older, now, Mom, Dad, I need you to buy me a car. Now, Mom and Dad, I need you to pay for my college. Now, Mom and Dad, I need you to pay for my wedding. You know, and you know, if we're not careful, we live our whole lives all about me. We get married, and we look at our spouse and say, now you take care of me, you meet all of my needs. And when our spouse says, there's the towel on the floor, and it's going to stay there. I didn't sign up for this. We go, whoa! We go into shock. Let me tell you, spiritual immaturity are people who come to church and say, it's all about me. I want to be pleased. I want my needs to be met. I want to be happy. I want everything the way I want it. The people that go to the cross of Jesus are people that say, how can I meet your needs? How can I serve other people? And they don't come expecting to be served. And the only way that's going to happen is take them to the cross. One last statement I think we've got up here. Why you serve is even more important than where you serve. You know, I don't think Jesus really gets a thrill and really loves it when people serve him with a bad attitude. They say, there I served. You better be happy, Jesus. I think he says, I don't need it. He wants people to say, I am so blessed, and I love you so much. I want to show you my love through service. You know, I want to close with this statement. Bob Russell, I think I got it here. Bob Russell said some time back this great statement. God doesn't use the superstar or the one who struts. God uses the servant. What gets God's attention are the bent knee, the bowed head, the broken heart, and the humble spirit. Will you be a servant for Jesus today? Let's stand and sing.